You like walk up to the Peabody for the first time and you're like, this is bouldering, you're like, this is insane. I can't believe people climb this. And that's what really drew me to that immediately. But I think even if I had a little bit less of a climber's mind, I would be able to see that in Bishop easier than I would be able to see that in the South.
I often say that what makes a climb really, really cool is that even people who aren't climbers think it looks cool. And that's for me, Grandpa Peabody really holds a lot of appeal there, where I just think if I took my mom up, she would just be like, oh, wow, that's a beautiful piece of rock. And then if you tell them, oh, yeah, we climb up that, they'd say, whoa, like
What?
that's
Yeah,
cool.
the challenge is really easy to understand with something like the Peabody. You walk up to it and you're like, oh my God, people climb this thing? People are crazy.
Zach Galla, good to have you back on Testpiece. How you been, man?
Ah, good. How you doing, Josh?
Good, dude. I can't believe it's been a whole freaking year since we last chatted. It's been a good year for me, but it's been a really good year for you. And it seems like you've just been traveling freaking nonstop. I don't want to put you on the spot here because I feel like this is going to be tricky, but where are all the places you've been this last year?
Oh my God. Yeah, I've been staying super rogue, just kind of staying on the road, just chasing weather. Had like great opportunities to travel this year. Yeah, some good support from sponsors and one of my homies in Salt Lake who works at the airport put me on his buddy pass system. So shout out Noah. He really made it all possible for the travel this year. But I've been bouncing around. I did a little trip to the New River Gorge with Nathaniel and Charlie Barron. That was super fun. Got to check out some sweet projects out there. And then not so long after that, I went to Squamish to hang out with my buddy Ethan Salvo. He showed me some amazing boulders out there, and yeah, that was my first time checking out Canada. And then yeah, not so long after that, it felt like I went out to Rocklands, spent 2 months there climbing outside. Had an amazing summer out there. Just not hardly can't really go to a better place that time of year, I'd say. Um, and then yeah, about a month and a half, 2 months after getting home from that trip, went out to Switzerland, hung out in Ticino for around 2 months. So, and then now I'm here in Vegas. So keeping the foot on the gas. I haven't. It's been very little time at home, but I've been enjoying it.
Shout out Tim Kang for providing the mic in the recording studio.
Yeah.
Dude, you also like went to Bishop. I know Bishop was in there.
Oh yeah, forgot about Bishop.
I liked how you started describing where you went. It was like, okay, within the US. Okay, went to Canada. Okay, now I'm like in Africa and then Europe. You like expanded that circle as the year went through. That's sounds okay, man. Sounds like a fun little year. And I know that you had some big sends throughout the year. We'll definitely get into it. But something that stood out to me that I wanted to ask you about is it seemed like every time you take a trip and you travel to, say, Rocklands, you just pick out like this hard, tall, mega line to focus on. And I was just wondering if that was how you viewed the trip. You're like, okay, I'm going to Rocklands. So of course I need to do the finish line. Is that like how your mind works?
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a lot that lined up for those boulders and Rocklands to be the ones that I picked out for the trip. I was like just coming off of sending the process not so long before. So I was in like a really big, like the hard highball like feeling is just like I was just really chasing that at the time. And um, yeah, when I decided that I was going to Rocklands and I kind of thought through the list of boulders out there, I was like, wow, like I definitely need to climb on Finish Line, need to climb on Smile, and I need to climb on Live and Large. Like those are the megas of the area. Um, so yeah, I was able to get two of them done. Still got to go back for Live and Large, but um, yeah, I think I've been a lot more selective with like picking out like what boulders I try when I do go on these trips, just because I feel like now that I have a lot more freedom to kind of travel around and go where I want, I can kind of plan and be a little more methodical with the things that I try. Um, has made me just I've decided that I needed to be a little more picky in deciding what I really want to like sink my teeth into. Um, so yeah, I'm trying to always make the main goal of the trip like one that I can really look back at like years later, be like, wow, that is an amazing line, and I'm glad to have that on my list. And Finish Line was one that I was going to be hard for me to leave Rocklands without climbing on that thing at least, see what it's like.
It is so freaking beautiful. I think I have a thing for arêtes. Some people are really into that sheer face look, but an arête to me somehow just begs to be climbed, in my opinion. Okay, I'm glad Live and Large made the list of things that were in your purview for ones you may want to add to that, kind of like Rockland's tick list. And I'm gonna ask you a question. I actually asked this to Matt Foltz. Someone of your caliber can go to Rocklands and literally everything is fair game. Like there's nothing out there that is like, oh well, that's a V20. Like so or for me, I don't think the finish line is probably fair game for me to be like, I'm going to be out there for a couple of weeks. Like maybe I can do the finish line. So I have to it constrains my choices. And so I'm wondering, like, when you go to a new area, or I almost want to pull this even further out and say, with your ability to travel, now there's the entire globe. Like, how do you decide what is worth your time?
Yeah, I think it's tough, and it's always like changing where my motivations lie and like what gets me psyched. But yeah, I think uh, I kind of have this like Venn diagram in my head, right? Of like what is like the most mega line that gets me the most psyched, and then also like career wise, like what would be like a cool line for me to climb. And I never try to like just pick. I always just try to find the ones that fall in that middle ground, right? Where it's like this would be an awesome groundbreaking ascent that I'm like super hyped on as well. Um, and when those two things line up, then it feels like I'm really climbing on what I should be climbing on for myself, and also to get other people psyched. I don't know. It's always changing. It's like it doesn't always have the same criteria that like makes things line up. Like sometimes it's like a hard high ball is like a hard thing for me to look away from because I'm like, this is a big piece of rock that's like a mega line and I need to climb it. And that's like something that always jumps out at me. Um, but I also don't want to be like put into like a box of my styles necessarily. So I'm like, that could also change and be like, well, I haven't done hard roof climb in a while. And usually, like, my favorite way to climb roofs is when they're kind of close to the ground. So you can really limit try and you don't have to worry about like taking a nasty spill or anything. So that's something that got me super psyched on that new Sosa climb that I put up in Little this summer. Um, and yeah, it's just like walk down the holds all got me really psyched. It was a new climb, so that also got me stoked that I had to unlock it all myself, and I had some friends up there helping me find beta and stuff, but it was mostly like a pretty solo endeavor on the low to that one. So that was also an interesting kind of newer experience, like doing a first ascent in that grade range. Felt really nice.
Oh yeah, that little V16 FA you also did this year. Oh yeah. Well, we'll definitely get into that. It was tricky, man. When we were talking before, it's like, what climbs are we gonna get into? Because we only have so much time, and you've done a lot this year. And I think it's totally makes sense, that idea of the Venn diagram and thinking about where you want to put your time. But the thing that I think is really even cooler about that is kind of something that you didn't exactly say, is that to me it's really interesting how you are tackling, like you are just going out and hunting those lines on a global scale. Like it's really tempting for people to stay local, and there's nothing wrong with like developing your home area, like you did that V16 FA in basically your home crag, which is awesome, like great to add to it. But in some ways, like when you change your view about what's possible, and instead of just being like, I'm gonna like get really good and then maybe I'll go out and like try to do finish line, I like this approach of like, the world is my oyster. What's badass? I don't care if it's sport climbing, like low boulder, just what am I psyched on? And so that's a cool theme, man. I gotta applaud you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's always it's always a tough game to like pick out what I'm psyched on at the time. And like I said, my motivations kind of like swing pretty drastically. But once I like find the thing that really like that really gets me sucked in, it's hard for me to look away. My motivations usually don't stray once I'm like locked in on something. I'm like, this is the one that I'm gonna do everything to do, and then I'll think about something else.
All right, this is probably a tangent, but when I think about when I first saw you kind of starting to make waves, and it was a while ago. You're getting older, man. It was on hard roofs in the South. You think that's like why you kind of maybe cut your teeth on some of that stuff? Is that why you think you still have a penchant for doing hard roofs?
Yeah, I think so. There's definitely a decent amount of good steep hard climbing down south, and I guess a lot of the hardest things that I ended up doing were in that steeper style. But the south definitely gave me a I don't know. I really it made me look into like the quality of what I was trying a lot. There's so many like amazing like the everything like micro about the South is really good, right? Like if you're a climber, when you walk up to the boulders, like the you just immediately notice how bullet the rock is. You're like, this is like a permanent climb. Like the stone is amazing, the hold set is awesome, but it's a lot more in general. It's a lot more like micro things that you see on the hard climbs there that like are only appreciated as a climber. So like it got me really into that side of things, and then like going out west and to places like Bishop, it's like a lot more of like a grand scale like meganess, and maybe it's not as good as the South when you look at like micro level, the rock quality and the hold sets and stuff can be a little nastier and stuff, but like the grand like line is like a lot more appealing or something to me. So uh yeah, I'm not necessarily sure. I think that that definitely dictated my style a good bit, and um, yeah, it got me ready for climbing on hard granite stuff as well. But it's a different beast down there, though.
I gotta ask you a little more on what you mean about the micro stuff. I guess we're talking about raw quality. Do you mean like that? Yeah, there's just like, oh, that is like a perfect ergonomic pinch, or like, yeah, what do you mean exactly when you're talking about micro? Because there's still some sick lines in the South too. Like,
Yeah,
there's some
for
impressive
sure, for
lines.
sure. There's some standout things like the Shield and Golden Harvest and all these like the classic boulders that everybody sees are definitely ones that you can see as like a non-rock climber and appreciate like, wow, that's a really sick boulder, you know. But I'd say like in general and a lot of the harder stuff, I don't know if you would get that same reaction to like walking up to the matriarch or something. I think as a climber, anybody sees that and they're like, whoa, somebody's got to do this roof or whatever. But it doesn't stand out in the same way. But going to the South as a climber and like having the appreciation for like the more micro things about the climbs that make them really sick, it's like that definitely like stands out. Like any climber will go to the South and be like, whoa, I've never climbed on sandstone that feels like this, you know? It's like you don't really have to worry about it being wet. You definitely shouldn't climb when it's wet, but it's like the structure of the sandstone is just like a lot more bullet than other areas. It's like easy to like mistake it. It like feels as strong as granite or something. It's like it's solid. It's some solid rock, and that is something I feel like a lot of climbers appreciate when they go there for the first time. And along with that, the holds that it forms on this amazing rock are just so buttery, just meant to be grabbed. A lot of them, so it's pretty cool. Perfect challenge.
Yeah, I totally agree with all of that. I just wanted to push you on it because coming from California, and like Bishop is kind of maybe my, where I really spent the most time, and I really love the grandeur of it. Like you're saying, the macro. It's like you walk up to Grandpa Peabody and you stand under it, and it's like, whoa, like I'm gonna climb
Yeah.
this, but and you did with the process. But then I think of I love the South and something like Golden Harvest, which is so cool, and that sequence of that like kind of toe cam, and like it's just has like a beauty the way it flows. But it's not that it's like a low ball, but it's not, a 60-foot Grant egg that is just sitting in the desert, like calling to you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, it's different things get you psyched on the climbs down there for sure. You kind of have to have like yeah, it just depends on what you're looking for, right? Like I think Bishop like if the boulders were not as grand or they were tucked in the forest or something, it's like they would not have that same appeal that they have being out there in the buttermilks just like spread across that field. It's like, you could just get the whole view of the whole boulder. You like really gives you great scale and size of what's going on out there. It just looks like an alien planet. You like walk up to the Peabody for the first time and you're like, this is Boulder. You're like, this is insane. I can't believe people climb this. And that's what really drew me to that immediately. But I think even if I had a little bit less of a climber's mind, I would be able to see that in Bishop easier than I would be able to see that in the South.
I I often say that what makes a climb really, really cool is that even people who aren't climbers think it looks cool. And that's for me, Grandpa Peabody really holds a lot of appeal there, where I just think if I took my mom up, well, I wouldn't take my mom up and show her me climbing on it. But if I were, she
Yeah.
would just be like, oh, wow, that's a beautiful piece of rock. Like, and then if you tell them, oh yeah, we climb up that, they'd say, whoa, like
What?
that's
Yeah,
cool.
the challenge is really easy to understand with something like the Peabody. You walk up to it and you're like, oh my God, people climb this thing? People are crazy.
Hmm. Okay, that really makes me want to segue into the process, which is a V16 up Grandpa Peabody that you snagged the really coveted second ascent of. But I just like, I do want to get into that. But before we dive into that, that actually happened not too long after we recorded the last podcast. And one of the big themes of our last podcast is kind of that you were moving on from competition climbing. And, people, a lot of climbers do that for a whole host of reasons. But I think it's important to point out that you had a ton of success in competition climbing. It's not like, to me, it wasn't totally clear that you should, if I were a career counselor or something, like it wasn't totally clear to me that you should head away from it because you were good at it, man. You were incredible at it. And I think you had kind of come off of Pan Am's and not quite secured a spot in the 2024 Olympics. And you said, I think I'm moving on from competition climbing. And so, can we just rewind back to then and kind of now with hindsight, like, what do you think about that decision, and how'd your year go, knowing that maybe competition isn't the thing for you as much anymore?
Yeah, I think my early success in competition climbing is really what kept me in it the longest. And like, yeah, it's hard to not want to go do comps when you're consistently doing well at them. And it was nice to like see my group of friends and stuff always competing. Like we had a really good squad of people who were like really pushing each other in the comp scene. And yeah, I made some of my closest friends like Sean and Nathaniel, Drew Ruana, all those guys I like met and climbed with a lot through the comps. And um, yeah, I'm like really grateful for all those experiences. And it was really nice at the time. But I always felt like while I was competitively climbing, I kind of had like one foot in, one foot out with climbing outside. And it felt like I really wasn't able to get the balance that I wanted to be able to do both while also competition climbing. Um, and I once all the big stuff was over, all the Olympic qualification. I did 2 Olympic qualification years. I was really close for Tokyo. I was like one spot away at the Pan Ams, and then 2 spots away at the Pan Ams for Paris. Um, and so kind of after all of that bubbled down and all these like high stake things that I was really pushing for, I was like, well, I took a step back and I was like, am I really motivated and psyched on the competition side of climbing? And I kind of realized that that motivation was like coming from the opportunities that it might have brought me. Um, and really like I kind of realized that my goal in trying to qualify for the Olympics was to like try to build a stable enough career to allow me to just climb outside. And then when it came to that time where I didn't qualify and it was time for me to like reassess and think about what I wanted to do, I was like, well, I don't really like the competition climbing so much anymore. The style is like gone farther and farther away from what I'm good at. It feels like I actually have to sacrifice my outdoor climbing skill and I have to train completely different things in order to be good at this other side. And then when I have my like couple weeks throughout the year where I'm in the off season, it's like now I'm not ready to go climbing outside because I've been doing all this coordination stuff. And then also like, I don't know, my motivation is just low. So I kind of realized like yeah, where my true motivation lies once the dust settled on the Olympic things, and I really dove into climbing outside, and I've been having a lot better relationship with climbing since transitioning over to climbing outside.
It sounds like it didn't quite fit into that Venn diagram overlap. It was more on the like, what does the climbing world want to see versus what do I want to do? But I understand that pull, man, like because I'm sure there's a financial incentive and then but the idea that like you're doing it so that you can go climb outside later and you're now just doing that is kind of funny. It made me think of a anecdote from I think from the last pod. You had some comment where you had been training at the training center for like 3 or 4 hours and you're like, dude, I'm not even tired. I think you went and did like 10 one-arm pull-ups because you were like, I'm not even tired. Like my fingers, my
Yeah.
back, the thing we equate with climbing. And it made me wonder, well, kind of two things like, did you get some value from that training that translated into outdoor climbing? And if so, do you ever kind of do that kind of training, like the coordination or whatever you want to call competition climbing training?
Yeah, I'd say as soon as I decided to make that step out of climbing outside or out of climbing in competitions, and I jumped into focusing on climbing outside, I completely ditched all of the comp specific training stuff, right? So I really dove in. Pretty much all of my training now is on a board. I'll like warm up on the commercial set, and I'll go and climb on the board. And I've been like definitely neglecting those other skills that are generally just trained and focused on like when you're trying for competition. Um, and I'm not exactly sure how I feel about it yet. I think it's something that I might have to like dive back into a little bit to keep the sword sharp in those things. I think that it does teach you like skills that do apply to climbing outside, but maybe in like a little bit of a roundabout way. Um, so like coordination and stuff. Obviously, you're not gonna do the same style of coordination moves that you're doing in comps these days on rock, and there's jumps and stuff outside, and there's even like slight coordination things, but the reason that they're not hard for the same reason as they would be in the gym or how they would set them at a World Cup. Um, but I do think like just the process of like working those things gives you like a good idea of like what to look for, and it helps you kind of dissect the same issues you're having on like a project, even though it's not like um, the same style. But I think the problem solving aspect of comp climbing allowed me to like solve things pretty fast outside and figure out like where the best method is for me. And I think that skill definitely translated over a lot. And even though it's not directly board crimping fitness or whatever, like I was extremely fit when I was training for the competitions. I feel like the load that you do in order to get ready for a competition is generally a lot higher than like how I would train to get ready to go climbing outside. I'm a lot more focused on my skin. I'm just focusing on if my fingers are feeling strong or tired or whatever is kind of how I dictate how my sessions are going. But you can climb for a long time in that comp style and really just get a lot of volume, which I think is not necessarily a bad thing. Um, so I probably should jump back in a little and do it. I've been starting to feel a little rusty on my jumps and stuff. Some things that I wouldn't consider in my comp climbing era. Now I look at like a basic jump move and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta get up there. All right, and then I usually can figure it out. But if I was still in comp shape, I probably would just no hesitation.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about that you can add that volume without taxing those things that typically are outdoor oriented, like your fingers or your back. And because I I do think that there's a element that people don't appreciate about getting good at climbing of like doing more climbing. Like I feel like there's this trend on the internet of encouraging people to like make sure you rest more, make sure you rest more. And I'll meet people and they're like, yeah, I mean, I only climb like 3 days a week. And I'm like, well, that's cool. Like, go hard and climb 3 days a week. But I don't know if there's anyone who is a really good climber who, when they first started, I mean, I climbed like 7 days a week. Like, I mean, I was young, I could do it, but there's an element of just doing moves. Like, strength is super important, but you got to put in that time too. But I mean, obviously, you have put in that time. But
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely noticed that my volume is a lot lower now that I'm focusing on climbing outside than when I was focusing on the comp. So maybe like my long term like resistance, how long I could try a certain boulder in a day is like a little lower, but I feel like my maximum power output is a lot higher when I give myself like the proper rest. And also when you're only focusing on training these specific things that um, are conducive for climbing hard outside, that's like for me that's just climbing on the tension board. I feel like that is the most direct tool that I have that translates to my outside climbing performance. Um, but that's hard to climb on 2 days in a row for me. Like it's like if I have a really hard tension board sesh, my fingers start hurting. Like everything, it feels like I almost train to the point where I feel like something's getting a little tweaky, and then I'm like, I need to rest. So it's like hardly ever more than 2 days on when I'm focusing on improving those like rock climbing strength elements, whether it's my fingers and my tension and all that stuff. It's like it's almost mandatory that I lower the volume a bit, but a little more than 3 days a week. It's pretty nice.
Oh yeah, yeah. Don't sorry, my talk about extra volume or doing things like comp style so you could do more things, that does not apply to, or I have no idea how that applies to you and your chasing of the hardest boulders in the world. That's just my, you know, my hot take for kind of all those of us trying to still get the good, not great. I have to ask a little bit more about the tension board, and I sent you. I was like trying one of your climbs. Do you have some favorite climbs, either that you've set or that you've climbed on from other people? Oh, and what's your board account? I know you have a board account now.
Yeah, I got a board account. It's called Hold Smasher. Um, Pretty funny. We just like me and all my roommates in Salt Lake have just goofy named board accounts, and Brian Squire as well. I guess my board recommendations, if you're looking for hard projects to try, is anything set by Brian Squire on the spray layout. I mean, dude is super strong on the board, and I mean those are at this point those are the only climbs that I haven't done on the board, or some of these Brian climbs, and that's usually what I climb on when I go into the gym. He's got like a really good style that yeah, he sets unique movements that are also really powerful, and yeah, good boulders over there. I think his board account is Itsy Bitsy Little Crimpers is what it's called. So
I don't know Brian, but I started following him on Instagram because he seems like he's crushing outside as well. He's coming up, it seems like.
oh
So
yeah, big
I didn't
time.
realize you guys were tight. That's cool. Okay, let's go back outdoors and talk about the process. The V16, kind of up the, not quite up the gut of Grandpa Peabody and Bishop, a little to the right. It was first done by Daniel Woods, I don't know, a long freaking time ago, and it had not seen a second ascent until you did it this past year. Can you tell me a little bit more about the history and what drew you to that line and just kind of your journey on it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the process is a funny one because it was like a subconscious thing that I had in my head, that's something I wanted to climb ever since I was really little. I remember being like, I mean, I think Daniel did the first ascent like 10 years ago now. Um, so I was like around 14 at the time or something. And I remember going to like a Real Rock film premiere in Atlanta, and they had like a big inflatable screen in the middle of this park downtown. And me and a bunch of my friends and the climbing team and stuff went out there to watch. And in that Real Rock, Daniel does the first ascent. Um, and I just blew my mind. I was like, it's perfect. It's a massive highball overhang with crimps with a jump to the lip. I was like, this is, but it never really like, especially when I was 14 years old, it didn't really sit with me as something like I want to do that one day. I wasn't even like ambitious enough to like think I could or whatever. But then it always sat in the back of my mind as this like the mega climb in the States for me. I just like checked all my boxes of things that I thought were badass and awesome. And and maybe 2 years ago when I finally got around to trying it for the first time, I was like, oh shit, this is totally something that I can do it. Like I started watching the video again, and I realized that like the upper crux boulder after the flake is something that suited my style really well. And It's kind of like wide arms, but kind of like really bunchy feet. Just something that seemed like it would fit in my box, and I was like, man, this climb is something that I actually could do. So I went down on like a little recon trip when Tim was filming his Focus, the highball link up, and kind of in between days of us like working on getting him out for that. You know, we were at the Peabody a lot, so I started trying, and I was able to flash that the drop off boulder, Blood Meridian, or Social Distortion, kind of has two names. I like flashed that boulder to the flake and came down. I was like, okay, now this is like solidified in my mind. Like, I know I can do the beginning first try. Like, I have to get up on the rope and see what this thing's all about. So yeah, I continued to try through that trip, and at the end of that trip, I ended up doing the link from the end of the flake to the lip, and then I did on the rope from the lip to the top. And I was like, it's all there, and I really want to climb it, but it still just seemed like an intimidating, like daunting task. So I sat on it for a little bit, trained up in the gym a little more specifically, went down for like a short weekend trip. Didn't have the best weather. Had some good goes though, and then yeah, a couple months after that, I kind of etched out some time where I was like, all right, I'm gonna go down to Bishop and I'm gonna hang out in Bishop until I can get this thing done right. Um, and yeah, it was a really interesting one to try. I think one of the biggest challenges of that boulder and hard highballs in general is just the logistics of trying them, especially when they're steep. It's like, you know, you can't lower down the process and try from the flake to the lip. Like we kind of played around with some like experimental ways to try it and stuff. Like Sean Rabbit, who had stacked up like a bunch of pads and then would get on the rope and then try off of the pads on the rope under the lip. Um, but that was a really complicated thing to try, and I honestly found it scarier than just pulling on off a ladder and trying that part over the pads. Um, so really, for me, the way that I had to work the boulder was I could just climb the intro. The only holds I could reach from the intro were the start holds, and then um, after that, I had like a 5 or 6 foot A frame that I would stand on the top rung of, and that would allow me just to grab that flake at the end of the drop off boulder. And so all of the moves that I tried on the top were from that flake and link. So it kind of maybe took me a little longer to figure out like the jump and stuff. But once I did the jump for the first time, I had done it coming from that shoulder move, the footwalk into this right hand and the jump. So like I kind of worked it into a place where like by the time I did that move for the first time, I was like, sweet, like I can do this link. You know, it's like I have it two pieced essentially. Excluding the top out, which we could talk about a little bit. But yeah, I was like, I was really confident, but it was an interesting thing that like I would never try a boulder closer to the ground in the same way. You know, it's like I would always try things more individually and slowly start building the bigger links. But just since I couldn't pull on from anywhere else with the setup that I had, I was like, I just really got to try this whole link until I did it. And then once I was able to do that, the confidence was really high to be able to start trying from lower.
I like that there's some logistical effort. I think that's what makes kind of highballs or these megas a little special, is that it's not just like, oh, I can fondle everything. I can like, just dial in every move perfectly. Uh, can I like break down the climb and see what you think about? I just want to kind of like, I'm sure people have seen your video, but I want to like share what little bit I know of it and then hear how you break it down. There's Social Distortion, Blood Meridian, like a crimpy V13, V12, V13 to a big flake. And then is it right off the big flake that you head into the shoulder, or is there a setup move into that big shoulder move?
Yeah, there's not really a setup move. Your right hand's at the top of that big flake, and then I kind of just come around and touch the other side of it where your foot ends up going later, and then you're right into that shoulder. And then it's like a 1, 2, 3 move, like V13 or 14 from there to the lip. If it's V13, it's like really condensed, you know. Um, so it makes it feel super hard. And then yeah, from that lip to the top, you're essentially done. You need to feel like you're totally done in order to be able to do the boulder. But I'd say from there, it's like a V7 or 8 or something from the lip to the top of the boulder. Um, and even though it's huge, you kind of are done with the hard climbing as your feet leave that lip of the boulder, which is around 18 feet or something. So you're kind of like you really shouldn't fall when you're like 20 feet up.
Is it a secure V7 or V8 outro slab? Like, you know what I mean? Like secure being that like the holds are positive and like it may be like long, far pulls, or is it like techie V7, V8?
It's definitely a little tech. It's like, as you get above that patinaed rock on the Peabody, everything gets like kind of crossly and not necessarily the worst rock up there. I honestly think it's pretty settled. I wasn't too worried about breaking anything on that section coming straight off of the lip. Um, but it is definitely scary. The times I've had times where I've felt horrible up there on the rope. Like, the conditions aren't right. My skin's not right. You need to have the correct skin for the holds to like really feel like anything in your hands, or else it kind of just feels like asphalt if your skin isn't like tough enough to hang on to these things. So that's something I was really worried about coming from lower. I was like, I need to like have a chalk bag up here so I can like kind of reset, um, and try to get my skin into the right conditions to get up there. Another thing that can make it really hard is like you just have done like 10 moves of straight bone crimping. So it's really easy to be completely numbed out when you get up there. And yeah, the hold types are pretty interesting. It's like some decent end cut edges, and then I get this gas stone end cut thing with my left hand and lock in like a huge drop knee on a vertical wall just to reach as high as I can, like literally the full extension of my arm to get to like a like 4 mil edge on a slab, and it's a really gritty textured hold, and it's on a slab, so it kind of feels like something, but it also is like not the type of hold you really want to be grabbing like 20 feet off the ground. And you just kind of, the last move is you kind of have to annihilate this edge, get your left foot on, and just lock off to like a decent like 2 pad edge, and from there you can chill and reset. And from there it's kind of like a series of like mantles and like slabby foot moves that you wouldn't think about if they were close to the ground, but up there on the boulder you're definitely like still pretty engaged until that starts to crest out, and I just started running to the top of the boulder once I felt like I could. I was like, get me off of this shit. um but yeah, it's a super interesting one in the way that like I don't know, it's hard because when you stick the iconic like jump move to the lip, you're really done with the climbing. Like in my head, like I'd kind of known that I had just sent it, so you have like this moment of like euphoria. You're like, I'm, I did it, but then you're like, then you got to calm yourself down and be like, wait, I still got to do it. I'm not like, I'm done with the hard bit of the climbing, but I still got this V8 head wall ahead of me. I'm really high off the ground. I can't get too excited. I have to stay totally focused and locked in to not make a mistake because it's getting dangerous now. And then you crest over the top and you're like, I'm out, I'm good. And then it's like, and since it's like slowly slabs into being something completely effortless, it was like a slow release of like realizing I was sending, it was like my concentration, like, can slowly start to come down as things get easier and easier. And then I'm like, just slowly realizing I'd sent this boulder as I'm like running up to the peak of it. Um, so it's an interesting thing. It's not like dunking a jug at the top of a boulder in Rocklands and freaking out and pulling over the lip. It's like this kind of slow burn that was really interesting thing to experience. Honestly, I haven't climbed anything quite like that, except for maybe Finish Line was pretty similar.
Mm. Okay, we'll get to that next. Yeah,
Yeah.
not too many out there like topping out the Grandpa Peabody. That was really cool. I loved hearing the breakdown of that top boulder because I hadn't really heard of it. And in some ways, it's really easy to write it off where it's like, okay, like it should be just chill, right? Like, and I think that armchair experts are like, well, you just did V16, so V8 is super easy. But we all know that there's like different kinds of V8 easy or quote unquote easy. Like if you were next to the ground, it was like, Zach, do like this lock off from a really positive hold to another really positive hold, and it's V8, and you just be like, this is super secure. Like, there's no
Mm-hmm.
way I will drop this one. I'm feeling good. But then that like vertical Gaston to a 4 mil edge when, dude, I would not want to fall there. I think that would be, I mean, for a whole bunch of reasons. You don't want unsend from there, but that's
Yeah.
high off the deck, dude.
Yeah, it's definitely a big boulder, and it's a good landing. I think I never fallen above the lip. The first time I stuck that lip hold from the bottom, I took it to the top, luckily. But yeah, definitely would not want to fall from up there. You're getting pretty high. The scariest move on the climb, though, is that crux jump move to the lip. And that's super scary because your feet, I mean, at that point of the Peabody, it's the steepest part of the Peabody. It's like the um, most overhung spot. So it really feels like your feet are straight out in front of you when you're setting up for this jump. And then you jump as hard as you can to this lip hold, which is pretty good, but it's like a one pad in cut edge thing. And it's kind of gas stone, which makes my pinky always pop off when I stick it. Um, and it's got good friction, but it's a not the most. It doesn't inspire the most confidence when you're setting up to jump for this hold.
Can you can you break down that boulder for us? Sorry to interrupt you, but we know about social distortion to that good flake right in the middle of the wall. We know about that top out, but that little short thing is kind of like iconic and condensed. Like it's kind of the meat of that problem. So could you really start
Yeah,
at the flake and break it down for us?
yeah, that boulder is really amazing. I really like the style of climbing from the flake. I think if that flake was just close to the ground, it would be the most classic V13 or 14 around. Other than the fact that there's a broken hold, but I'll talk about that a little as well. But the boulder is like you have this nice break point after climbing the intro boulder. It's like maybe a little more than a pad, like just straight flat edge. And yeah, it's just totally perpendicular to the wall, so you can really get behind it, hang. You have some decent feet, and then you kind of like reset for the crux boulder. And the first move of the crux for me is like you kind of have low feet and you go full extension into this gas stone that's so far away that usually whenever I would hit it with like it's pretty lucky if I would get it with like two fingers really well. And then I would stand on my tiptoes to get my ring finger in, and very rarely could I get my elbow out enough to get my pinky on the wall as well. And then after you get this hold, it's like really thin edge, maybe like quarter of a pad, but pretty end cut. And then it kind of thins out for the back of your fingers, for your back too. Um, yeah, after you get this hold, you're in this fully extended position, and you just have to do like this footwalk to get your left foot just directly in between your two hands, which is like one of the harder bits of the boulder for sure. Is like getting your left foot up into this, and then you match feet right in between your hands, bike the bottom side of the flake, and then you kind of have to like ISO hang this left hand and reach back into this really weird Crosley pinch. And like the first couple times I tried to grab this hold, I just thought that it was completely unusable. The hold has like changed a lot over the years. I think it was originally it was like a pretty good end cut hold, and then and then it broke before Daniel did the first ascent, and then shortly after Daniel did the first ascent, it kind of broke again into nothing, and was like reattached to the wall. But now that it's like reattached to the wall, it's like a little bit of the end cut in the back has some like glue in it, so it, like the friction's not super good. And I'm not exactly sure how much different it is than when Daniel climbed it, but I've heard that it's just like a little nastier. Maybe it's just as good of a hold, but it might be harder to find the right spot or something now. Um, and it kind of all my goes pretty much all came down to how well I was able to find and line my fingers up on this kind of Crosley pinch. Like most goes, I would lock off and grab this thing, and it just felt like there was nothing in my hand. There was no way I was going to do a jump off of it. And so I would just kind of fondle this hold for a while, never get it right, and then have to drop. And so that was pretty annoying. But then, yeah, luckily I just had like a few goes where I got up there and really found the in cut bits for each of my fingers would line up on the hold. And then once you have that, you're able to kind of sag into the right arm a little bit more, kind of hang in between both arms. And then you can kind of like execute this jump to the lip. And it's really like, since this right hand pinch is quite bad, you're really just doing a really fast, like, left hand juke, like moving your left hand from this one crimp to this other crimp above your hand as fast as you can, and like that's kind of where most of my weight is in that left hand. Um, so yeah, you like juke your left hand, get this in cut hold, and your feet swing from completely vertical in front of you to completely uh, behind you. Like you just go like straight 180 with the legs, and you have a lot of air under your feet. So it's really scary to like know how you're gonna fall, because like if you jump to this hold and you don't commit to it, then you usually take like a decent fall. You kind of bring your legs straight down. It's like kind of the right height to where you like your body levels out by the time you get to the ground. Um, if you do commit for it, but like your right hand picks, you could fall really wild. If you like go for this hold and you kind of stick it, but you like swing off, then you're kind of like spinning into like just air. It's just I luckily never had a bad fall on there. It seemed like it always, in some way or the other, would spit me off onto my feet. But like getting myself to commit for that move, knowing that my feet were gonna swing this wild way, and I was that high off the ground, that was really the mental crux of the boulder. Was committing to this jump for the first time over the pads is was pretty terrifying.
It definitely makes for an amazing picture when you guys do that move and just swing way out, get horizontal, big boulders, steep wall, beautiful mountains in the background. And yeah, I just, it makes me think like, what if that right hand blows on the lip? Like if you really, if you picked off of that, like you like do like a weird flip or something. And I don't know how high that is. It's not insanely high, but it's gotta be like 16, 18 feet or something.
Yeah. I think the lip of the boulder is at 18 feet, is what I've been told. And that kind of
Yeah,
makes sense. It looks like, but it feels like you're 40 feet off the ground. I don't know.
of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know how steep that is right there? Like it's the steepest part of the wall. Did you guys ever take an iPhone and check it out?
I'm not, I'm not sure. I would say it's maybe close to like 60 degrees or something up there, but
Wow.
the wall really like waves out. So like it might not feel like you're climbing on like a true 60 because your feet are like a little lower on this curve, but definitely like right by the lip, it gets like pretty close to roof for like the last like foot and a half of, the wall before you get to that lip. But it's really just a big wave that kind of ends in like, yeah, almost a 90-degree steepness or something right there.
To just a 60, a wave that crests at 60 degrees of patina on an 18-foot wall to then a sweet heady top out. Yeah. Cool boulder. Yeah, I know a little bit about the history of it breaking, but I could be wrong. I actually thought even the juggy flake on Social Distortion broke at some point too. I think that used to be better. Um, After this was after Daniel did the first ascent, and then I'm pretty sure that the story behind that one hold that broke multiple times is I want to say Dan Bell broke it, glued it, and then it broke again into nothingness, or not nothingness, but into unsalvageable thing. So, just kind of interesting history. Is that what you heard?
Yeah, that's what I heard as well. I didn't know about the flake breaking, but that also doesn't surprise me at all. It's still a pretty good hold. I don't think it really changed so much. But I mean that thing is pretty like protruding from the wall, and a bishop
Yeah.
tends to be real strong until it just snaps and surprises you. Um, but yeah, that's about what I heard. That I was really surprised at what this right hand felt like when I felt it for the first time. And there's a hold there. It's just insanely specific and hard to line up and get right. And I don't think that it changes the grade so much. I think it's pretty solid still at V16 for what Daniel broke it down as. I think for me the boulder is like a hard V12 to the flake, and then from the flake it's like a 13/14 to the lip, and then from the lip it's like V8 to the top something.
I should have watched the video of Daniel doing the FA before hopping on here, but I remember watching your video and I thought that you did it a bit differently, that you biked and then did like a 360 campus after sticking the lip. Am I right on that? Like tell me a little bit more
Yeah.
about your beta versus Daniel's, and were you just showing off, man, or is that like a good way to do those ending moves?
Yeah, so I do a lot more similar beta to what Dan Beal was trying. I think we're like just a little more similar in the way that we climb. Daniel's just kind of different than everybody else, I think. The thing that Daniel does differently is instead of doing that bike down low, I believe he does like a different footwalk. And instead of getting his left foot up on the flake first and then matching feet, he uses like a lower left foot to get his right foot up. I could be wrong. But once he's in this position, I know that he just shifts fully into the shoulder, doesn't use the bike, and just creates tension only on the right foot to get this hold. Um, and then he matches feet, I believe, and jumps off of a left foot to the lip. Um, and that way, it's like a little more powerful in the hands, I think. And it's a little slower, but I think you can stand farther to the lip before you move that hand. Um, so yeah, Daniel does it like that in this like normal, as you would expect, in like a really controlled, powerful style. And then once you get to that lip hold, it's really good. And I found that like since the wall is so steep right there, there is a foot that you can swing your foot back down onto to cross under and come out to the other side of the lip. But one time I was on the rope and I was like hanging up there and I was trying to swing my foot in and I missed it like 3 times. And I was like, this is going to be annoying if I just keep like barely getting this foot and it picks off or whatever. And then I was like, I feel really good on this left hand. So just one try, I just like campused around. I think the first time I actually stuck the jump and link, I was just like all gassed up and I just did the campus. And I was like, well, that's easy. And it kind of like 360ing, weirdly enough, like sets you up nicely because you're not like fighting this tension in order to like keep your body straight as you campus across the lip. Since you have to cross, you can kind of just dangle and then you're like double undercling like you're doing a chin up or something. And then this holds good and it's easy enough to spin around. And then you can swing your foot onto a big jug. So I don't necessarily know if it's better, but it's definitely for sure really fun and it looks pretty sick to do the 360. So
Yeah,
I was pretty locked in on that. I kind of wanted to do it like that.
I was giving you a little bit of shit, but honestly, it actually looked appropriate. Like it really looked good because you're at a lip of a really steep roof. Like, do you really want to kick your feet in and keep all that tension? If it's a good hold, campus. And
Yeah, might as well just dangle around.
yeah, I will say the
Yeah.
idea of in your hands and slow, a little slower, definitely sounds like Daniel's style. But the bike that you did just, I don't know, man, it looks really good. It looks kind of obvious almost. Like when I saw you do that, it's like, oh,
For
dude, he's
sure.
on the tension board, just fucking like, getting the
Yeah.
bike and making the move good.
Yeah, yeah. That bike it's kind of a little trickier than it seems to figure out. I think like it kind of locks you into the position really well, but it makes it a little hard to like if you don't have the toe hook just in the right spot, you kind of hold yourself too far under the overhang to be able to like reach this hold the right way. Um, but I definitely didn't feel like solid enough to like own this Gaston without a little extra help from my feet in that position. Um, so once I figured out how to make the bike work, I was really locked in on that beta, and I'm pretty certain that I ended up using all of the beta that Dan Beal was really close to sending with. Um, I also found on the last trip when I went out there, I was like doing a deep dive through his Instagram just to see if I could find anything, and he has one video of him doing like the jump move and then topping out the boulder. And that gave me that helped me out a lot because on that top bit of the boulder, I do that gas stone drop knee thing. That's actually like a Dan Beal method. The way that Daniel does it is he takes that gas stone with his right hand as a side pull, keeps his feet on the lip, and reaches up to this super miserable, slopey like friction pinch. And then from there, you do like kind of a sketchy like lean in move to reach up really high and get that thin edge on the slab. And I could do it that way every time, but it felt way less secure than this other method. So when I found that and tried it out, I was like massively relieved to know that I could climb the top, not like Daniel did it.
Dude, Dan is the master of slab and bishop. He's a good one to look at for beta. So that and still cheering for him to snag the third. He's gotten close, but yeah, I know it's still on his list.
Yeah, I'd love
Uh,
to see that.
yeah. A question I don't know if you have the answer to this, but that thing laid dormant for 10 years despite unbelievably strong climbers coming in, and they often got sucked into lucid. I'm just wondering why you think that is. Like, to be honest, 10 years ago, I was there watching I was watching Daniel try it. I was watching Carlo try it. I was watching Dan try it, and it was still a project. And shortly after I left, it got done, and I was like, well, dude, that's like the dopest line on the freaking planet.
Yeah.
And then 10 years goes by and I see a lot of Sons of Lucid, and I know it's a grade harder, but a lot of the people who, for the longest time, the only people who had done lucid dreaming were V16 climbers. Like, and it gets V15, but it's one of those things where you're like, oh, really? So it's V15 if you climb V16. Okay, interesting. And so why do you think
Yeah.
people didn't go after the process?
I think it probably comes down to mostly the logistics of trying it. You know, Lucid, I mean, you could give Syngos on Lucid with 2 or 3 pads. It's like you still got to do the massive top out slab, and probably nice to have a little foam under you for doing that. But you're done with the hard climbing at about like 8 feet. Um, like Lucid has definitely solidified itself. I think because of it having more repeats, it's kind of solidified itself as like more of this like classic test piece boulder. And I definitely see it as that as well. Um, but yeah, I don't know. For me, I immediately spent more time on process just because that was the one in my mind that was like, when I walk up to the Peabody, that's like the line that I see. I'm like, what's the steepest part of this massive overhang? I'm like, oh, it's over here. And I'm like, there's a perfect line of crimps that take me to the top that ends in a jump move. It's like, I'm going to try that one. But yeah, it's like, it's definitely interesting. I think that it's super scary. I think if you don't have like a good head on your shoulders for high balls, it's like something you probably, don't want to dive into. But I mean, really, in the grand scheme of things, it's pretty safe. And I think that now doing the second ascent, I think there was also just a big question mark surrounding the process with the kind of multiple breaks and the holds being reattached and stuff. I think a lot of like when I was there trying it, a lot of people were kind of confused and would ask me like, "Oh, that thing still goes?" Like I thought the hold broke off. I'm like, "No, you can. There's a hold up there. It's like glued onto the wall. It looks like a potato or whatever." But I was like, "It's still up there. Like there's a climb. It goes." But I think a lot of people, yeah, there was just kind of like this weird like mystery surrounding like the state it was in, and I think a lot of people were under the impression that it was something that was like didn't go, and so I think that kind of strayed people away from climbing it. I also think like the quality of Lucid is amazing, and it's kind of like going back to what we talked about with like the macro and micro level things of like how I feel about like climbing in the southeast is like Lucid is like an amazing climb on like that micro level, right? It's like it's these perfect patinaed grips. It's way more bullet than the holds on process. It's like a permanent challenge. Like Lucid most likely isn't ever going to change. It's like this amazing bullet rock, and yeah, this pinch is not going anywhere. That thing's staying on the wall forever. But it's just like yeah, I mean, you kind of look at it from like a climbing, like a rock climber's micro perspective. You see Lucid and you're like, that's an amazing climb. But I think the process has that like grander, like wow factor that really sucked me in.
Dude, what's funny is the way you described walking up to the process. I was like, that's fucking bouldering. Like, dude, what is this giant, like, steep thing with perfect holds and a jump move at the top? I was like, to me, I was like, that is the essence of bouldering. But then the way you just described Lucid, where it's like, it's this perfect, like, unique hold that really is like a perfect kind of like test piece of like, also shout out to Jared Roth for unlocking that classic move.
Yes, for
Um,
sure.
and like I was like, wait, maybe that is bouldering, what you were just saying, like that kind of,
Yeah.
microcosm of like appreciation for something really specific and beautiful. So I see both sides, but for me, I I had my experience walking up to Bishop, seeing that boulder. It was pre-guidebook, and I was like, what the hell do people climb up that thing? And it was
Yeah.
evolution at the time, but like for me, I had that same feeling of like, this is, people can do this, and to me, I think I always am attracted to that grandeur, like you're saying, the macro. And
Yeah.
so good on you. I feel I'm in your. I feel like my Venn diagram is similar to yours there. I like that macro scale. So um, should we leave Bishop? Should we go across the world into the summertime that is winter in Rocklands and talk about other grandeur, giant macro climbs? And I want to kick it off by saying I loved that video, and I just found out you made it. Was it Best Believe It? Is that what it was called? Where you went to
That's right.
Rocklands?
Yeah.
So that is on the Tension channel. It's freaking dope. I good job on both the doing the climbs and the editing. But I will tell you that, and I think I texted you this when it came out. It's like dope video. Where the hell is the finish line in there? Because I knew from stalking on 8A that you had done that. And so tell me about going to Rocklands and some of those climbs that you got to do there.
Yeah, Rocklands is amazing. It's like I've wanted to go for a super long time, and I had a trip planned with one of my roommates, Nathan Williams, for the summer of 2020, I believe, and obviously that didn't happen. Right when we kind of had things booked, shit hit the fan, and nobody was traveling around, so we had to bail on our trip. So it kind of like sat in the back of my mind as I was like, oh man, I didn't get to go to this place, whatever. And it kind of took me a while to go, but I think in the grand scheme of things, I was really grateful to have like waited until I was at a certain level to be able to go experience it for the first time. Um, it just made everything like that much more exciting, like pulling up and being able to kind of like smash through these classics that probably would have been my projects of the last trip, and then still have the time and ability to like try some of the hard highballs as well. But the thing that I was blown away with Rocklands is like when you're driving in from Cape Town, it's like you you're like you pull up and you just start seeing rock out the windows. And then I was like, okay, sick, we're here. And then I like look at the GPS and we're like 2 hours away still, or an hour and a half or something away from Rocklands. I'm like, this is insane. It's just you're passing thousands and thousands of boulders. And then when you finally drive into like the main road where you like go over the pass and you see like roadside and like all of the main areas that are super established, you're like, I mean, it's just mind blowing. It's like you can just sit in one spot with a telescope and just scout like 1,000 boulders. It's like just an unreal amount of rock, and all the rock is amazing. Perfect jug, chicken head top outs. You like get to the lip of the boulder and you just throw yourself over the top. Just amazing, like gymnastic movement, comfortable rock. Um, it's never like cold there, which is gets to be a little annoying on some of the harder climbs, but in general, like it's pretty dry, and the rock type isn't like the most condition dependent thing for my skin I've found. Um, so yeah, it's always just like an enjoyable hang. You're never like freezing your ass off, but you can still climb hard, and um, yeah, it's pretty unreal. You're kind of really like assimilated into the community out there as well, which is one thing that I really liked. Like everybody that you meet in Rocklands is traveled from somewhere far away in the world to come to this spot where it's the winter with all this amazing rock. So everybody's kind of like united on this one goal. It's like yeah, there's not too much other chaos going around. You're pretty like locked in the climbing scene. It's like going to Miguel's or something and camping at Miguel's to go climb at the Red for the first time. It's like a similar vibe to that, I'd say. Where everybody's kind of there for the same task, and you meet up in the mornings to talk about what you're going to climb, rally some pads for the projects, and yeah, it's an awesome community down there in the summer
Dude,
or in
good
their winter.
in their winter. Good
Yeah,
description of Rocklands, dude. Seriously, you took me there. It's been probably like 8 years since I've been, but yeah, it's aptly named, right? Rocklands. You just are like, oh, there's rock here. This
yeah.
is there's a lot of rock
There's some
here.
rock.
And yeah, it is it's a special place, man. I was wondering if it was your first trip, and it seemed like you got to tick just classic after classic. But yeah, again, take me to why the finish line, smile, and then even looking at living large. I know you said you were on a highball mega kick, and how quickly did you lock into those projects? Like, did you hang out doing some of the quote unquote easier lines first?
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to like sample. I wanted to make sure going to Rocklands, it's like it'd be a shame to not climb on. I think they're to climb on a lot of the classics, and luckily for me, it's I feel like a lot of the most classic boulders and Rocklands are in that like V13 range. Um, and so I spent the first couple of days out there climbing on boulders in that range. Like as soon as we drove in, we went straight to Sky, and I climbed that one. That one was like that's for sure the best AP I've done in my life. And yeah, I was like just amazed. So that was a great way to set off the trip, kind of like learn the style a little bit, kind of figure out what's going on with the rock before like diving straight into the hard projects. Um, then I think not so long after that, I tried maybe my next day actually. Um, I tried and did El Corazon. Um, and El Corazon just happens to be really close to the Smile, which was probably number one on my list before showing up. Just because I had just come off of doing a hard highball second ascent, and I was like, this is an unrepeated hard highball from Giuliano, and I thought it looked amazing. The video that got me the most like before going to Rocklands is old mellow video called Pretty Tall, which is Giuliano doing the first ascent of the Smile, and then Daniel and Sean Rabitou doing like the fourth and fifth ascent of the finish line. Um, so that video being like the one that I always watch when I think about Rocklands obviously drew me into those two lines. And coming off of a hard highball in Bishop not so long before, I was like psyched to keep that momentum going. Felt like I was kind of on top of the world with highball things. I was just feeling not very scared of them and still extremely inspired by them. So it was like the obvious thing for me to go try. Um, so yeah, I think like second day of the trip after doing El Corazon, I grabbed a rope and ran over to the Smile because it's on like the same plateau and set up and started trying it, and it felt hard. So I like was like, okay, I got a good amount of time to be down here. I'm kind of open ended on my trip, but there's just this one move, the lock off from the mouth of the Smile into the eyeball is extremely hard. This left hand crimp is just really thin. The right eye you're going to is like kind of a decent sloper, but it's a strange move in that you really have to be kind of like close to the wall and really low when you get to the hold. If you like overshoot it at all, it's like you feel no friction in the sloper. Your body has to be like just in the right position when you get to this hold in order to stay on. So that move gave me a lot of trouble. And then I tried Giuliano's beta for the end, and it felt impossible. Like he grabs this, like he flips this right eyeball and then grabs like this horrible, horrible intermediate, and then like switches feet and then goes left hand again to the lip. So I kind of played around with that for a while, realized it was something that I was just not going to be able to do, and then realized I could take the two eyes and get my foot really high in the mouth of that Smile and then just house it all the way big dino to the lip. And when I figured out that that was my method, I was like, this is another one like process where it's like, it's just a badass ender to a boulder. Like doing an all points off dyno to this jug lip high off the ground was like such a good feeling. And I was like, I need to know what that feels like off of the rope and coming from the bottom. So it got me really psyched, and I locked in on that one. I think it took me like 2 or 3 sessions in order to finally stick this eye move. And when I stuck it for the first time, it like surprised me. I was like not very close, and then all of a sudden I like did it pretty easily, and I was like, whoa. And I like rested on the rope for a while, did it again. I was like, holy shit. And then pulled the rope, came down and got ready, and then gave 3 tries. And my first 2 tries, I only really tried 3 times from the bottom, giving it actual rips. And my first 2 tries, I fell off that last dyno to the lip. I was just like a little too far away from the wall. And then my third try, like I was coming far away from the wall, but just still like got my hand over the lip, like got some friction and stayed in. And it was like that one was an interesting one because kind of like process, like I was saying, is like a slow burn of like realizing you sent. That one was like my hand stuck to the lip, and I was like, rah, like instantly screaming. Knew I had sent the boulder. Throw yourself over the top. It's all jugs up there, and it's like I don't know. It was that was a cool feeling. It was like everything all connected, and like the excitement was all like exploded at once, you know. Um, so that was an amazing boulder. So it didn't take me very long to lock in on the hard stuff, I guess. Once I tried that, I was like, okay, I could do it, and I want to keep climbing on it.
To me, that's really cool when the micro and macro come together where it's a cool, tall, beautiful boulder, and then ending with that kind of like bunchy, like exploding, springy feeling where you have to like be up high and then make sure you commit and then snag like a top out and have that be like the ultimate move at the end is really fun when, you know, a boulder can just be beautiful and be worth climbing on. A boulder can be like, oh, that's a dope move. But then when they come together and that's like There's almost like that commitment and danger element, and it all culminates like in a final move. That sounds dope. That's I'm gonna go watch that video again.
Yeah, yeah. No, that one's sweet. And that video will be live. I can send you a little sneak peek, but that video will be live beginning of beginning of next year sometime. So coming
Cool.
out in like a month or so. So yeah, and that'll include both my sends of Smile and Finish Line. So that's a video I'm really excited about. It's like Pretty Tall Part 2. The video that inspired me to go to Rocklands, I was able to remake my own version of, I guess.
Yeah, tell me a bit about the finish line.
Yeah, the Finish Line, man. That one's like yeah, I mean, as far as like pure aesthetics go, just like looking at the line is unreal. Like that one is like more, just way more inspiring in person than I could have ever imagined. Like I knew it was an amazing boulder when before I saw it, but I mean, it's just this massive like leaning pillar essentially that kind of sticks up and leans on top of another boulder, which is actually an established V11 called like Question of Balance, I think. Um, but yeah, it's like this massive overhanging pillar that kind of comes to like an arete just point, and then on both sides of the arete, the wall is just completely glass. Like there's no potential for other lines on either side, which makes it extremely pure. Like when you're standing on the side of the line and you're looking at it, it's like the only way up is like climbing just by pinching this like corner arete. And then you get to the top and it's just like the small flat area. It's like the highest point of the coop area. You can kind of like oversee this whole massive valley. And the back side of the boulder, since the front where the finish line is overhung, the back side is like a slab that's just covered in these like jug like scale things. So it's like the perfect up climb and the perfect down climb. It's like situationally, it's like insane that it worked out the way that it did. It's like there's things that are mega, like the process and evolution and all those boulders, but it's like those boulders are next to other boulders. You know, it's like the finish line is the finish line, and there's nothing else there. There's the up climb and there's the high ball down climb. You know, it's just like situationally perfect. I think it falls a little less into like lining up with the movement as well. I find the movement's like really unique and like a fun, interesting challenge. But the rock is pretty abrasive, and the pinching this arete, like the little bits of purchase that you get are like extremely wide. Um, Luckily for me, it fit my hand type really well. I have like super, like I can unhinge my thumbs really far. So I like a super wide pinch. But a lot of people have problems with it, like cutting the webbing in between their thumb and their fingers because you're so wide reaching around this pinch that like the edge of the arete is like digging into that webbing. Um, so it can be like something that's really uncomfortable. I found it like pretty comfortable in the climbing style, pretty cool, but it gave me a lot of really gnarly skin issues. Felt like I needed to be extremely dry in order to do it, in order to feel like I had friction on these holds. Um, but I used some anti-hydrol during the middle of my trying, and I had my best try ever and came down and immediately had realized that I had like opened a massive split. So I wasn't able to try for like 2 weeks. So like the logistics and the tactics and stuff were like the biggest challenge, and like getting that thing done. It's like finding the right friction. It almost feels like you're doing a slab arete, but on a slightly overhung wall. It's like you have to stay really close. The feet are kind of smeary. Um, and then you just like have to line your hands up on these holds like perfectly in order to get the most power out of them. Um, but that one, like just purely because of how striking it is when you see it, that's what really drove me to be like willing to deal with all the nuances that it takes in order to getting it done.
When you're talking about all these lines, dude, you kind of just have this optimism. It kind of is like it always sounds like you were just going to do them. And when you just were talking about the finish line, you kind of were like, oh, I had a good go. And then I got a big split and I couldn't really do it for a couple of weeks, couldn't even try it for a couple of weeks. And I'm just wondering about that behind the scenes kind of mental stuff. Like, did you start freaking out? You're like, my trip is going to end. I'm not going to do this climb. Like, I don't even detect a hint of that when we're talking about all this stuff. And I'm wondering if that is what's going on, or if you just, or if this is just your style that you're, hyper confident on it.
I don't know if I ever. I think I always had comfort in knowing from my first couple of sessions that it was something that I could climb, right? Like I knew that it wasn't like I didn't try it and get spanked in a way where like I didn't think it was going to be possible. But I mean, for sure, getting a split and getting pushed back and stuff like, I mean, it's a hard thing to deal with when you're on a trip and you have a certain amount of finite time. But luckily for me on that trip, I kind of was open ended. Like I knew that I was going to be able to stick it out as long as I needed to, but I also had been there for long enough where I was kind of getting ready to come home. So it didn't really feel like a big loss if I didn't get it done. But it really was amazing the way that it came together. Like after I got that big split, I had like one like I thought it was going to be one more sesh before I had to drive back down to Cape Town and get on a plane to come back to the States. But I pull up to the boulder and gave like two really good tries, but my skin was just not feeling that good. So I like felt like my chances were lower that day, and I was like, "Damn, well, you got to drive back to Cape Town tomorrow. Like, this is gonna be." I was like, "I'm gonna have to walk away from this one." It's like, what a battle! It's like at least when I know I come back next year to try to live in large more, it's like I'll be able to get this done quickly. It's like I think I'll be able to remember it well. Um, so I was like, okay, I thought I was kind of walking away and then kind of decided like, if I stopped climbing on it right now, I should have a little more skin for like two more goes tomorrow morning before we drive down to Cape Town. So we like go back to the place, whatever, and yeah, just chill. And then I'm just kind of like thinking about the boulder constantly. And yeah, the morning we go to pack up to go to Cape Town, we like get everybody rolling as early as we can to try to get some temps. We get out there and it's just hot as hell. It's like does not feel like the day at all. I'm like warming up in like a little cave so my body stays cool and my skin stays okay. And I'm like shorts, no shirt, just like and I hardly warm up. I do like three moves on jugs, tug on like a couple crimps. Um, then I go to the boulder, and my first go, I'm like, whoa! For some reason, the friction feels like super good. I like fell on the crux move, but it felt like I totally could do it. So I laid there underneath the boulder for like 10 minutes, fanning my hands, just like staring up at the line, um, and then ended up like next try, just all connected, felt effortless. And then we were just like down, climbed the boulder, hopped in the car, drove to Cape Town. It was like the best ender of the trip. But I think since I didn't stress myself out too much or like call it quits early, it's like I feel like all of my trying throughout the whole trip kind of like led up to me feeling decently confident for that last day, even with the high pressure scenario. Maybe a little bit of like comp experience helps me out in those last day efforts as well.
Dude, those long car rides after sending like right before are so good. You're just like you're at peace. I feel like your mind starts wandering to like, okay, I did that one, so now I get to move on to like this next
Yeah.
one, and it's like this freeing. Yeah, I've had that a few times where you wake up the morning of send the proj, and it's a joyful car ride, just nothing but smiles.
Yeah, that's exactly how it was. When we got to Cape Town, we partied hard. It was the best send off ever. Yeah.
Dude, I love that Cape Town is right there. Actually, I wish Cape Town was a little safer. Like, I don't know what it's like now, but it was sketchy for us. I mean, it's kind of infamous for being sketchy, but it's also one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And because of that exchange rate, like we were out at Michelin star restaurants, all you can eat and drink, and spending like $30. And yeah, anyway, I do. I'm just reminiscing. There was good times out there.
Yeah, it's amazing. Rocklands, it was like this year, it was like $5 for 24 beers. It's
What?
pretty crazy.
It's
Yeah. And I
dangerous.
would just go like like a lot of the time I was staying up in Clan William instead of like down in the actual valley. And that's kind of a nice place to stay. It's like the closest town. It's a little sketchy over there, but like a lot of the Airbnbs are kind of in like gated neighborhoods and stuff. And still like for what you get, it's like so cheap. It's like nice big house pool, like $300 for a week or something, you know? You're like, it's insane. So we were staying up there and I would go to the grocery store and I'd buy like a 5 pack of steaks for $3, 24 beers for $5. And I'd just be set for a week.
It's
That
American dream right there. It's like, are you in Texas or are you in South Africa?
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. That I always joke around. I'm like, South Africa's the most free country I've ever been to in my life. You can really do whatever you want down there. It's awesome.
As sketchy as Cape Town is, I do feel like when you get out into the country, it's just like it is not. If you're a criminal, it is not worth your time to go to Rocklands and steal carabiners from climbers. Like you should be in Cape Town where there's
Yeah.
like rich people. But so I did feel like as soon as you just get out, it's all good. But uh,
Hmm.
okay, so you chased winter. You were chasing that endless winter vibe. You came back and then you were off to Switzerland. Yeah, what can you tell us about that whole vibe shift?
Yeah, Switzerland is a completely different vibe than something like Rocklands. You're a little bit more like stuck with your crew, and like I mean, just depends on like what kind of trip you're willing to have. If you're trying to go solo somewhere, it's like you could really like it's a lot easier to meet people out climbing and stuff. Climbing in Rocklands, you're kind of just like assimilated into the whole community of everybody. But Switzerland is like like most people stay in Locarno, but they're kind of all like spread out. Um, and there's so many different zones that it's like you might just not line up with people who are there. It's like there's a lot of different areas that are kind of spaced apart. Um, but it's an amazing vibe on the other end of the spectrum, though. It's like the rock quality and the way that the lines form is just like perfect. It's like yeah, I find everything there is like a challenge for like all of the right reasons. And um I yeah, I think that everything is kind of like straightforward, and you could come in with like being really fit, having some margins, and then like really being able to show uh what you're capable of. Just because everything's so like perfectly straightforward, there's a lot less like annoying things about the climbing, I find. um so yeah, it's like just pure fun jumping around between good holds, and a little more fingery and stuff than Rocklands, but yeah, great scenery and like a completely different way. A lot of times you're a lot more like enclosed in the forest, and there's just like ancient stacked stone walls around, and everything's covered in moss, and uh, it's just beautiful.
So you were riding your mega highball hard climbing wave, and I wouldn't say that's what Switzerland's known for. So what did you when you're planning your trip, what attracted you or what gave you inspiration that fits into that Venn diagram?
It was a little interesting with Switzerland because we had this trip planned for a while, and I knew I was going to go, and I made a little bit of a list. But a lot of the stuff I wanted to try was up in Bavona, and Bavona, especially when we first had arrived, was a little weird with access. They were still doing a lot of like rebuilding of the road and stuff from the massive rock slide that happened up there. Um, so it was pretty tough to get in and out, and we didn't know like how much we should be up there. So a lot of the stuff that I wanted to try, I kind of like decided to wait to try for another trip. Um, and it ended up chilling out a lot, and I got up there a few days towards the end of my trip just to get to see stuff. And um, so yeah, I wasn't really able to try roadkill. I feel like it would probably been nice to be like have a little bit more of an open area before I put pads on the street and try a massive highball. But that's what I really wanted to try, was at the top of my list. Um, but I ended up just kind of like going around with the crew, and we just kind of like we're all psyched on checking out a lot of the similar classics, like all the Brione 8Bs and stuff. And kind of in doing that, I like saw things that I was like inspired by that like weren't on my list going in. Um, and really, all of the hard boulders that I ended up climbing weren't things that I had planned on trying before I had gotten there. I kind of like waited to walk around and like chill for a while before I found something that really caught my eye that I wanted to sink my teeth into, which was an interesting way to do it because uh, I feel like sometimes it's hard to tell, especially with an area like Switzerland. Um, it's easier for me to know what I'm going to be psyched to climb on once I actually see it in person and like feel how the boulder climbs. It's like harder to get an understanding, I find, before you pull up.
Any gems? It sounds like it was your first time there. So any kind of classic gems that really left you with a good memory that maybe you could, basically tell me to put on my tick list or whoever's listening?
For sure. Vecchio Leone is the second best 8B in the world, I think. um, yeah, after Sky. But yeah, Vecchio is amazing, perfect hold set. It's like the Rock and Brione, especially up there on the hill, is like it is like I think it's like a nice and granite combo. I think it's mostly nice up there, but it has like a really like sandstone feel to it. It's like all these ergonomic edges that are kind of like rounded off in a super comfortable way with like great sandstone feeling texture on it. It's like you almost would never know that you were climbing on nice. But it's just perfect power crimping, like couple moves. Then you have to annihilate this pinch and cross into a good edge. Um, but yeah, great straightforward power test piece. That one like really stood out to me. The whole Brione V13 circuit is amazing. That one, Amber, uh, Amber is a little closer to the ground, but like the rock quality is crazy. You could just stare at it. It has all these like um, quartz like swirls and stuff in the rock, but nothing that like protrudes out and makes it sharp or anything. It's just like this beautiful swirly rock with like this buttery sloper rail at the top. Um, yeah, perfect climb that one. Um, yeah, what are the other? What's the other? General Disarray is
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
sweet one. Um, Also, just a great like straightforward powered test piece. A lot more like open hand and pinchy, which I found to really like on that one. And um, yeah, one boulder that I'll say that is not like I didn't know about before pulling up is Manson is like a 8A right next to General Disarray. General Disarray kind of sits up on this pedestal, and just below the pedestal, there's this kind of like tall, beautiful wall, and it has this perfect line where you like start on like an undercling jug, kind of on a slab, match an edge, and then the wall kind of swoops back into an overhang, and there's like a perfect sloper, like arm span away, and you just like jump off this slab kind of back in the overhang to this perfect sloper matchup, go out to these like amazing buttery edges and stuff. And that one is one that like when we walked up to General Disarray, it's like that catches your eye first for sure. I was like, how did I never know about this climb? So that's one that really stood out in my mind, is like that's one of the best in Brione for sure.
Yeah, I've never even heard of it. I mean, that just shows you how much good climbing there is, and that is the exact reason why I'm always looking to become a better climber and get stronger. Is the ability to just walk by something and just be like, what's that one? I need to go do that one. And it's kind of like regardless of the grade, regardless of the name or the provenance, you're just like, no, but that one. Like I gotta
Yeah,
do that one. Hmm.
yeah, that was definitely one of those for me. It wasn't on any of our lists pulling up, but I mean, me and the whole team that I was with pulling up to that boulder for the first time, we were all like, "Whoa!" Like let's put the pads down, which is so nice. It's like such a it's a refreshing way to go on a climbing trip, especially coming off of a lot of like very goal oriented trips. Um, Being able to go check out like a new area like that and just yeah, just kind of walk around and decide like, whoa, I really like this one. It's like really close to the car or something. It's like chill, super quick hike, and then it's like an amazing line. It's like I got to do this. Like let's come back here tomorrow. This is easy to try. Or like something about the line stands out to you, or you're like, man, it's like, yeah, this is the one I want to do. It's nice to be able to like have the time to walk around and pick things out that way. Um, Instead of just trying to figure out what something's all about through a screen.
All right. I could definitely just stay in Switzerland with you and hear about a ton of stuff, but I know that you've got a video coming out kind of not too long, but not super soon. And I don't want to spoil that. We already have so much other things to talk about. I'm sure we could have done a whole podcast just on Switzerland. Uh, your year is not complete without me going back to the US and going, I think, to the springtime and saying that you just did an FA of a new V16 called Sosa. And that's going to be a video that is, I think it'll be out by the time this pod drops. And it's another lost tapes, right? Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. They're super excited about this video. It kind of is funny way it all came together. It's called the Lost Tapes just because Bobby was kind of filming us and the whole squad out in Salt Lake, just local Utah stuff, he would always come out and film us all. And then at one point, like all the footage got corrupted and just like lost, and he couldn't find he couldn't like get any of it together. And eventually, he was somehow able to like recover the clips that he did, and it was totally enough to make this like fully cohesive video. And I think that it really, yeah, it really shows off our crew's vibe and kind of what we have, the special thing that we have going on in Salt Lake right now. And yeah, the ender of that video is the first ascent that I did in Little Cottonwood. Um, Massive granite roof, same parking, but opposite side of the canyon from Grand Illusion. Pretty similar style, but a lot more condensed. I'd say it's like, I think it's like 12 moves or something, where GI is like 20, but all of the moves are like a good bit harder than what GI's got going on. It's a little more power, a little less endurance, but still in that power endurance realm.
I gotta ask why you called it Sosa.
That's kind of stupid, but I don't know. I really like Chief Keef. And we kind of were, as a joke, we were bumping this song when we first found the roof, and it's a Chief Keef song called Unstoppable. My roommate Odin put me onto it, but the whole time he's just saying like on the roof though. And we just thought that was funny as hell. So we were just like, Sosa roof, Sosa roof, we're on the roof though.
That's how it happened.
So
I
yeah.
definitely listened to Love Sosa right before we hopped on here, just because that's what I was like. One, I was like, is that Chief Keef? Is that what we're going?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Chief Keef reference. But I also just thought it was like a funny, like just short, condensed name for the boulder, kind of like, and kind of my like subtle naming, or like the subtle reasons for me why I called it that is like the roof is like it's like low ball and it's kind of shitty in some ways. Like it's a dugout roof. So it's not like this grand like sweet line or whatever. But in my mind, it's undeniably cool, just like Chief Keef.
nice, good
Yeah.
connection you made there. Yeah,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit more about the style. It looks heinous, dude. Like, well, I shouldn't say not heinous in a bad way. It looks short and powerful in the bottom to like a really difficult ending. And yeah, can you break it down for us?
Yeah. So about a year prior to me doing the first ascent of the low, we were shown the roof by these guys that are locals in Salt Lake. Um, they were hiking down after a long day of like working on the working on the boulder and stuff. They had been like just going up into White Pine and like kind of like looking under these boulders and realized that like, well, there's this massive roof here, but there's just like all these rocks that kind of fill the cave. That like if we can remove them, there's going to be another, another Euro roof or something up here. So kind of finally they got it to a point where it was climbable, and I guess that day they had tried it a little bit and they were like, damn, like this thing's really hard. They're like, I'm glad that we like made this a possible line, but like we got to get some, we got to call in the artillery for this thing, and they hiked down to the parking lot, and my roommate Odin was there. And they just kind of sprayed to him. They're like, hey, you and your friends, y'all got to come up here and try this roof that we just finished like making possible. It's really, yeah, really cool line, whatever, and showed Odin some videos, and he instantly kind of ran up there and checked it out, felt the holds, and came back to the house later that night and told me about it. And I was like, are you serious? There's another Grand Illusion roof in Little Cottonwood. And I was like, this is awesome. And so yeah, pretty soon after I went up there and kind of went straight to work, and had like a good squad of people going up to try with me. Chris Kosser was up there, Ben Hanna, Hamish MacArthur. We were all up there when I did the first ascent of the stand. Me and Hamish actually went back to back. I think he did the second ascent of the stand right after I did the first. The stand basically starts near the middle of the roof, kind of maybe slightly closer towards the end, on this really sweet like tufa jug pinch. Um, you do like a pretty extended move into like this rounded crimp, maybe half pad or so, and then you kind of like get some high feet lock into this really high kind of smeary bike, and tension up to another like flat edge, sag out as much as you can, and then just pounce right hand again to this like finger bucket jug. And it's a really unique crux because none of the moves are dabby on the roof except for this one, because once you hit this jug, your feet come off, and it's kind of like the part of the roof where it's the closest to the ground. So you really have to like suck up in the right arm to hold this swing. Um, so yeah, we did. I did the stand start in a couple of sessions and felt really good, and kind of immediately was trying lower links and stuff. And it took me a long time to be able to link this bottom boulder into that stand start. Um, but yeah, just kind of whenever I had time, I'd run up there and play around on it. That kind of quickly became like the canyon, my canyon proj. Um, Especially it's really high up in the canyon, so it's a lot different season than a lot of the other stuff that I was trying. So it gets kind of snowed out early, but it also is like kind of one of the first to go into season uh, in the fall, just because it gets cold up there fast, and then once the snow melts, it'll stay good up there for a while, just because it's higher elevation. It's noticeably colder. Um, so yeah, that was whenever like the season lined up for me to try, I would be up there working, and then kind of through that the latter half of the spring season once it was climbable up there, and then starting to get a little too late in the season when I was able to put it together. I think I did it like end of May, which was starting to get pretty hot, but it's so like hidden under this boulder that it stays pretty good conditions through the summer. Maybe middle of the summer you're pretty hosed up there, but May is still a decent time for it. But yeah, just kind of started sieging that low start, and finally like found after like many different methods through the bottom, kind of found the one that suited me the best, and it kind of broke down to being like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 move, like I think V14 or so to get from the start into the stand. Um, and then you have to like execute on this like really, I find really hard like V12 or 13. I put up the stand as V13, and then um, I think the landing got dug out a little bit, which made it a lot nicer to try, honestly, and was pretty grateful for that. But then some people found it a good bit easier once the landing got dug. I really don't think it changed the grade so much. If it's V12, it's a really hard one, and the boulder kind of like all climaxes with that last jump and being fresh enough to keep your feet off the ground from the bottoms, like the real crux. So like the boulder math like doesn't it's a hard one to like work out, because just the nature of the last move and like the type of freshness that you need to have in order to do it makes it like harder feeling than the grade when you're coming from lower. So it kind of like, yeah, it all compounds into like just having, yeah, fresh power in that right arm. And it was really, really limit boulder for me when I sent. So,
Yeah, you looked freaking psyched when you sent, and
yeah.
that stand is like, it. I mean, you broke it down, but it kind of looked kind of like a one mover. I mean, almost like it's a three mover where all of it's like set up for that snatch. So was that where you were falling from the bottom?
A lot of times falling from the bottom, I fell on the first move of the stand a couple of times, which was just kind of finicky. It's like if you get the body position right, you can slow it down enough. It's not something you would really ever drop from the stand once you learn it. Um, and then fell on the second move of the stand a lot. But yeah, I kind of fell all over that thing, to be honest. I never really knew where I was going to get it. Didn't really like tie down to a crux. I like I fell on that last jump maybe twice or something from the bottom, but it just kind of all accumulates into how for me it was, I think my biggest crux was keeping that smeary bike in and having the right tension to get this hold well to then be able to set up for the jump. So yeah, like you were saying, like getting set up in the correct way for that jump kind of became my crux from the lower start. But physically the hardest part, it was probably sticking that jump and just linking the bottom boulder into the stand. Like that what took me a while to do.
Did you guys shout out the names of those guys who are out there just putting in construction work and unearthing entire roofs by moving boulders? Who's that local crew doing that?
There's one dude. I gotta pull up their Instagrams real quick before so I can get a name, but I feel like it's worth it. They really did a lot of work for me to they really did a lot of work to make that thing possible. And they've been doing a lot more up in White Pine North. There's like a lot of these boulders, but it's just this huge talus field. So there's just a lot of like small rock that just like gets like just rolls down under these what would be amazing lines. And they've done a lot of work to just kind of like make a lot of really cool climbable boulders. They just opened up one called Neolithic. That's like a really sweet like neoclassic V10 up there. Um, and yeah, they put a lot of work into that as well.
Yeah, I saw that boulder like on Instagram like a million times over one weekend. It seemed like the V10 of the week.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely popped off. Yeah, one of the guys is Delay My Belay on Instagram. And then I'm really blanking on the other dude's name. I can't find him right now.
Ah,
But
well,
big shout out to those guys. They really oh, and Austin Ernest, two guys put in the work to make Sosa possible.
always appreciate people out there doing stuff like that, making trails. It's real physical work, and then to share it is really cool. So just love giving the community a little credit there. Uh, so I
For sure.
watched that video, and I couldn't help but notice at the end there's this logo that says Black Diamond Hex. You guys didn't say anything else about is anything you can share that you're teasing there?
Yeah, for sure. We've been like super blessed with this like opportunity through Black Diamond to kind of create a new just like subdivision of the company that kind of focuses on the sides of bouldering that me and my friends are really into here in Salt Lake, and it kind of like follows and aligns with like the culture that we're trying to like build and push in the Salt Lake community. But essentially, a good way to look at Black Diamond Hex is kind of like a sub department in the way that like Nike has Nike SB, um, like Carhartt has a subdivision called Carhartt Whip, and so it's like a sub piece of Black Diamond, but we have been given like a lot of creative freedom to like produce the products that we want and kind of push this like new bouldering style that we're really into. And Bobby's done like an amazing job with the products, and we'll be going live beginning of March, I believe, will be the first drop. Um, but yeah, really cool stuff. We're super stoked. Every like a lot of the products are going to come along with like more dope videos, and it just kind of the team for the brand is kind of my favorite thing about it. It's really cohesive. It's just our core friend group of climbers in Salt Lake, so you can really see like the connection between everybody, and it's really good energy, and it just really makes sense as like a conducive team, which have has been really refreshing and something I've wanted to see in the climbing space for a while. Is like a lot of these big brands have all-star rosters, like great athlete teams and stuff, but not necessarily people that you would see climbing together very much. But we really wanted to make the team have like a cohesive vibe and be a group of people that we're consistently hanging out with and stuff. So it really does feel like a team. It's like these are just like my core close homies that we're always out going climbing with, and everybody brings like a unique perspective to climbing and style that they're into and stuff. And yeah, it's been really fun.
Shout them out. Who's on the Hex team?
Yeah, so we got Tuanon Benet, um, just super close homie. Met him in Salt Lake right when I moved out here. We've just been climbing together ever since. Noah Keithley, young gun, young legend out in Salt Lake. Lived in Utah his whole life. Been just getting better and better at climbing like every day. Um, then we got Sean Faulkner, true Salt Lake local Little Cottonwood Canyon legend. I'd say he's just done almost all the climbs out there. Yeah, really awesome, good dude. And Finn Stack used to lived in Salt Lake with us for a little bit, but he bailed on us, living in Colorado now. um, but no, Finn is awesome. It was really fun, especially our Swiss trip was actually on a mission to film uh, a video of just the whole team climbing together and just kind of like present that in a more like detailed way than this welcome to the team video that's about to drop. um, so yeah, that is going to be our first like feature film, and I'm really stoked on the footage that we got, and I think everybody will get to know the team well through that one. So
And Bobby Vinoy is the he's gonna be the one editing and he's running he's definitely part of the team, right?
Yeah, definitely. He's more of the he is the mastermind of Hex for
Mhm.
sure. He's the main lead on everything, makes the final decisions, runs the social media, picked us all out as the team for the brand. He's kind of the he's the director and manager of the whole project, and he's got just great vision when it comes to design through clothes and through media and the way that he's a true artist. I'm glad that we got him as our lead.
Something that you said that jumped out at me was just this idea of kind of like the bouldering you guys are into, this kind of scene. There's like this modern thing that's going on, and I don't know how to describe it. Maybe I'll throw it back to you, but it just seems like climbing has grown, or climbing's bigger than it was 10 years ago. It seems to be getting bigger and bigger, but it does seem like instead of it just being like quote unquote climbing, where your aunt asks you if that means that you've climbed Everest or something, you're like, oh, I'm a climber. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
did you hike up Everest? You're like,
yeah,
no, aunt, I did not do that. That's not what I mean. And there's this kind of like thing emerging. Maybe it's because climbing has gotten so big that these kind of disciplines sub discipline doesn't quite do it justice, but I do feel like what you're talking about is this kind of like core climbing group that loves exactly what you're talking about, gets your Venn diagram, understands it. And so, yeah, just tell me more about that scene and some of the people who you feel like the companies who are supporting it, and that you're just psyched on.
yeah, for sure. I think climbing's in like you're saying, it's just rapidly growing, and it's bringing in people from all walks of life that are interested in it. And I think that we kind of the whole Hex team is kind of like a lot of us grew up with like backgrounds in skateboarding and stuff, which just kind of like I think a lot of climbers now or a lot of skaters are making that transition over to climbing because there's a lot of parallels and like the things that get you really psyched, like projecting a certain trick or whatever, but also just the way that like the skate community is like presented and like the video style and stuff is like really intriguing to I think a lot of people and my generation and people that are like moving over from those other action sports and stuff. So we kind of want to like bring that style and like what we really appreciate about like skateboarding and these other cultures and kind of like put a new twist on it into like a climbing perspective to hopefully get people from those walks of life like psyched on climbing as well. And um you know it's like climbing can be as like granola backwoods wilderness as you want it to be, or it can just be like something you do on the weekends with like a group of homies, that like you'll throw the pads in the car. It's like rip up to the canyon, you're psyched. It's like I think that just the accessibility becoming easier is just getting a lot of people with different outlooks and like on what climbing is to them psyched on the sport. And I think that there's a growing bubble of people who are like psyched on similar things that we are now. And I think that like brands like Black Diamond Hex, Anti Grav, Mellow, all these like uh, companies that like are supporting like the core things that I'm really psyched on in climbing um are doing a good job at like making it appealing to people from other sports and stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't help but think about anti-grav when you talked about skateboarding too. And Keenan's got a big background in skateboarding, and I've always was impressed and psyched on him doing anti-grav, and just kind of like all of these groups or all these companies that are finding that focus and understanding what's really going on and supporting it is just a really cool thing that I feel like maybe used to happen a long time ago in climbing, like way long ago. And then it seemed to kind of not be a thing. And it was, I don't know, like it was more Patagonia style or something really big. Although it's too bad, maybe
Mm-hmm.
Patagonia is not the best example because Yvon Chouinard really was a badass climber. But
Yeah,
anyways, that's a whole
it
other
does feel
tangent.
like a lot of the brands outgrew the sport in some way and just kind of went from like a climbing brand into into an outdoor brand. And I feel like we lost a lot of the ones that are like core to climbing. um, and yeah, but now it's really nice. I think that like it's been hard for a lot of professional climbers and stuff to like find the support that I feel like they all deserve, through through climbing and through partnerships with these brands is like sometimes just things don't shake out the way that you might imagine, not being in the industry. But it's nice to see like a big swing around like Black Diamond really like, helping our crew out to like get out to the areas that we want to go climb and make the content that we want to make happen and stuff. It's like been really refreshing. But then also things like Mellow and Anti-Grav and Noise are all like started off as like climber owned businesses, which is that pour a lot of their money back into the sport and the aspects of the sport that like I want to see push. Like I'm just a big proponent of progression, and I love seeing all the hard shit people get done and getting the strongest people out to the hardest boulders and stuff. It's really cool to see, and I know that like with enough funding, like that's this everybody that has one of these companies now, like Keenan with Anti-Grav, Sean with Noise, Sean with Mellow. Um, they all kind of have like a similar vision and like really wanting to give back to the community, and make climbing like more of a career path for people and similar opportunities to us when we were younger. Um, so
Yeah,
I think if you have the ability, definitely vote with your dollars and support the brands that you like to see. You like to see whatever they're putting out, and I think to me those are the ones that are pushing it the best. And if you really want to support someone directly, those are the brands that like the people who own them are going to see the benefits, and I trust them to do the right things with the money to give back to the people that need it to get out on trips, and yeah, just to support good progression.
yeah, dude, I'm totally gonna echo that. I gotta point out that all those companies that you just named, the people who started them are all like V16 climbers. Setting the bar high. If I feel like if people want to start a climbing company, they better be damn good. I'm half joking, but it just shows you that the people behind these companies are, I don't know, you could say real climbers, core climbers. I mean, you don't stumble into climbing the best in the world, the hardest climbs in the world by not deeply loving the sport we participate in. And that voting with your dollars thing is so important because I mean, I'll just say that what I do is I watch mellow videos. I follow you on Instagram. I can't wait for, new videos that you or Bobby drop. And I also get inspired by those lines and I travel all over the world. Like now on my my Switzerland tick list, I'm gonna be like, okay, Zach said that 8A right
Yeah,
by, and
yeah,
so it's just to me, it's really important to understand that if we like that, if I like that, that's where I need to vote with my dollars to see it happen more because just the brutal, real truth of life is that there has to be some money behind these people to go out and do the hardest things in the world, make the best content in the world. And it's not like you guys are, you know, living like trying to drive Lamborghinis to the crag. It's just like,
yeah. I'm just trying to eat food and go climb, man. That's all I want. But it is really refreshing to see a company, extremely established company like Black Diamond, who's been in the climbing scene for a long time, deciding to like be like, whoa, this is like a really cool like bubbling pocket, and they're like, we've like seemingly it's like they want to dive back in and like connect with the more core audience and stuff. So it's nice to like see the big companies are down to and see the vision to push things like that. And I definitely challenge other big climbing brands to really give back to what's like creating them profit. It seems like there's a lot of brands that just kind of feel like one foot in, one foot out, like disconnected. But I would really like to see like big companies have cohesive teams that like make sense people together and try to like you know try to really support the climbers through their entire career, and um yeah, just give good opportunities to people with potential, and um yeah, really get to see like what the sport is capable of. There's a lot of people who are trapped in, and some of the strongest climbers in the world are just trapped in tough jobs, and don't have the time or the ability to get out as much as they could. And if they did, who knows what they might be capable of. So it's nice to see brands really putting support and places that I find interesting. And I mean, yeah, I think it's a cool thing, and it's nice to see like seemingly climbing's been having like a swing back in that direction, and with these with these brands started by core climbers, it's obvious that it's obvious to me that there's demand for that now, right? Like there's like these things are popping up and doing really well. It's like there's a large group of people that want to support this side of the industry, and I just think that's awesome. It's like kind of finally showing as like a proof of concept that like no, this is a sweet cool style of climbing that a lot of people are into. So it's nice to see. It's refreshing.
Yeah, I like that you quote unquote called out big companies, but I don't think it's necessarily like to have them give back. I think it's like to have faith that this community is growing, and then it's on us as, to ask these people to like vote with their dollars for those little sub corporations that do support our, our discipline of climbing that we really love. So just, let's call on those big companies to recognize it, and I hopefully it will be a profitable thing, and then they'll be able to pour more money into it. It's a nice virtuous cycle where really like everyone wins, and we get to do even more of the stuff we love. And so yeah, vote with your dollars. It's really true. It's how you see change in the world. If you're like, I like this, well, when you spend money on it, you're basically telling the world, let's make more of this, let's do more of this. So
Mm-hmm.
I like that you called that out.
Yeah, no, it's a really exciting time in climbing, and there's a lot of really cool stuff popping up, and it's kind of all the stuff that felt like maybe was around a little bit when I first got into the sport, but kind of disappeared, like you were saying, and it I feel like there was a weird like kind of soulless era of climbing like brands and stuff for a while. Like I noticed that like everything growing up was like I was really like amused by like pusher advertisements and mags and like old Piranha campaigns and stuff, and I was like all this stuff just felt like I don't know. It just feels like homey, and like I reminisce on like that era of climbing a lot. And then it kind of felt like as climbing got more corporatized and found its way into the Olympics and stuff, everything just kind of got like bigger than like the core community and just kind of like tried to sell to everybody. And then things got washed out as being like outdoor brands and like this is kind of like encompanies everything, and it kind of lost like the feeling of like no, like we are like hard bouldering here at Pusher and like all this like yeah, it just kind of felt like it got a little washed, and now it's like more specifically aimed brands and stuff coming back around that are like really down to yeah, to show off like the the aspects of the sport that I find really cool. So
Yeah, and I don't want to be super negative about even that era, because it's just things go back and forth, and hopefully we learn. Like it's not just that the pendulum swings back and forth too far; it's that it's like, okay, like this era we learned this, and now we're bigger and growing, and so we can have this. And so I'm hopeful that it's kind of it's like helixical. It's not just a circle where we would just repeat the same mistakes, but we're learning and going up. And I do agree that things seem to be on a little different trajectory after the last couple of years, and I'm excited. And all those companies you shout out are awesome.
yeah, I think especially now more than ever. It's like I've met some people in the canyon who are like the other day me and Twanon were out climbing in the canyon, and he was like, "Yo, dude, I really got into bouldering from watching you guys and the Confluence video." And I was like, "Wow, what a sick way to get into climbing, you know?" It's like such a unique like first introduction to climbing, but I think that now we're like building like a great database of like cool vids through Mellow and stuff that are gaining enough traction where people that have never seen anything about climbing might click on Sean Bailey's Shaolin video and be like, "Whoa, like climbing is fucking awesome," you know? And I think that that's like a really cool and genuine way to like have an understanding of the sport rather than just like flipping through ESPN and like seeing a comp for the first time. It might just not be as appealing to someone else. So it's nice that like yeah, we're just having like all these new avenues to like introduce it to people and like get new heads into the sport. And have them like have an understanding of what it's about before they buy a pair of shoes for the first time. And like, I don't know, I think it's pretty cool.
That is cool. And Confluence is a dope video. And the Lost Tape I just saw is really cool too. I'm looking forward to seeing more in Switzerland too when that comes out. Good times ahead. Zach, it's been a hell of a year for you, and I can't remember if I asked you this last time, but I'm going to ask you this time, and that's how do you go from good to great?
I think for me, what I've started to realize in the past couple years and just later in my career is the way I feel like I've gone from good to great is with intention, and intention being like intention in the way that I train, intention in what I try and how I apply my training to what I try. I think that if you spread yourself too thin, it's hard. I mean, you can be good and you can be a master of all trades or whatever, but in order to be great, you really have to like dial in on the thing that you want to improve to make that next step. And yeah, you kind of have to like sit back and dissect that within yourself of what is the missing piece and my strength or in my process in order to get better at climbing outside. And it's a hard thing to find, but once you do find it, just dive in full force and try to improve that aspect. And that's what's going to get you to the top of your next hardest project, I believe.
Very cool, man. I I love that thing of intention where you have gone out and just hunted the megas of the world. I just that was a big thing when I caught up with you, where I was just like, holy shit, man, this transition you went through, you are now just laser focused on the best of the best and not holding anything back. And it sure seems to be working. And you are definitely great, Zach. And so love that, man.
No, I appreciate that, Josh.
Okay, dude. We could have gone on for another 2 hours with all sorts of things. And what a great year, man. Just good luck on this next year, and congrats on all those sends. Congrats on linking up with that Hex team in Black Diamond, and loved hearing about the process on the process. That was a big deal. I don't know if I told you, but I was trying to link up with Jared to like drive out there and watch it, like, because I wanted to see it so bad. I missed it, but I'm glad I got to hear the blow by blow. It was just as mega as I knew it would be. So yeah, looking forward to the next one, man.
Yeah, me as well.
All right, dude. Take care.
Nah, you as well, Josh.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like even more content, go to patreon.com/testpiece. And while you're at it, share this podcast with someone you know who would love it. And please leave us a review or rating at wherever you get your podcasts. We've also got tons of great content on YouTube and Instagram, so don't forget to like and subscribe there. Okay, see you next week.